In 1956, at just 13 years old, Bobby Fischer played what is considered one of the greatest games of chess ever played, and in fact, it's been dubbed the game of the century. But how good was it really? With the advent of modern chess theory and, of course, modern chess engines, we could take a look at this game from way in the past and see, was it really as good as people think, or was it just a product of the time? So Fischer's playing the black pieces against Donald Byrne, who was one of the strongest American players at the time. He had won the U.S. Chess Championship in 1953, just 3 years earlier. And he was an international master with a peak rating of 2,475 and likely would have had a higher rating, but he had some health issues that prevented him from playing more chess. So by no means was Fischer playing an amateur opponent here. Byrne with the white pieces begins with knight to f3, the ready opening, and then after a series of book moves, we actually transpose into the Grunfeld defense after Fischer plays pawn to d5. And then this is where we get the first inaccuracy of the game, where Byrne plays queen to b3, and the computer doesn't like this. It doesn't say it's horrible. It prefers pawn to e3, which supports the central d4 pawn, also opens up your light squared bishop here. But it's not a killer move. The evaluation bar still says it's completely even here. Just a bit of an inaccuracy. And Fischer takes the pawn, takes back with the queen. And then we get a series of moves here. And then we get Bobby Fischer's first inaccuracy, and that is knight b to d7. The computer says, hey, just go ahead and play queen a5 here. And the purpose of this is you're pinning this knight on c3 to the king. And it's the only defender of the e4 pawn right now. So you just win a pawn here. But this isn't how people played back then. This was pre-engine days. People weren't out here just getting a pawn. They would rather develop and get activity. So you can't fault this move. And again, this isn't a terrible move, just a slight inaccuracy here. So we continue, rook to d1, and now Fischer again moves his knight. Again, the computer wants queen a5 for the same reasons. But I mean, look, moving the knight to b6 makes a lot of sense. It's a better square for your knight, and you're attacking this queen. Now, Byrne gets out of the attack by going to queen to c5, which is, again, another inaccuracy. The computer says, hey, just bring the queen back to b3. Everything is fine here. But instead, he goes forward, really trying to put the pressure on Bobby Fischer here, which probably not a good idea. Anyways, continue here with bishop to g4, pinning the knight. Looks like a great move, and it is the best move in the position. You're pinning the knight to the rook. And then we get the blunder of the game. Donald Byrne, for some reason, plays bishop g5, which doesn't really make a lot of sense because this bishop is on a good square. You've already developed it. You don't want to move a piece twice in the opening if you don't have a good reason. And what's the reason here? You're not pinning this knight. It's protected by the pawn. So really not anything good from this move that I can see here. Better, and the computer agrees, better is just to develop the light square bishop and break this pin on the knight. And you're playing Bobby Fischer. You don't want to give Bobby Fischer any advantages because, of course, Bobby Fischer will find a brilliancy. That's right, a double exclamation. Knight to a4, which looks like you can't play this move because it's being attacked by the knight on c3 and it's not defended by anything. But the point here, what Fischer is trying to do is what we've already talked about. He's trying to remove the defender of the e4 pawn so he can break through because Byrne's king is still out in the open. The bishop is still not developed. This rook is still stuck in the corner. If he can get a breakthrough here on the king, he'll have a very nice game. Now, Byrne actually does find the best move here, queen to a3. He does not take with the knight. He plays the best move, queen to a3. And then Fischer says, fine, I'm going to go ahead with my plan. I'm going to take the knight, and I'm going to take that pawn. So Byrne takes back, and of course, Fischer goes in and takes a pawn. And now Byrne needs to get going here because his king is open in the middle. There's a semi-open file in front of his king. Fischer has pieces in his side of the board. Still got to develop the bishop. Still got to get this rook into play. Byrne's got to get going here. And unfortunately, he plays bishop takes on e7, which again is an inaccuracy. And it looks pretty good, right? You're taking the pawn back. You're attacking the queen. You're forking the queen and the rook here. It looks pretty good. But the computer says, hey, just bring the bishop back. You know, get some defenders around this king, get developed, get castled, and then start attacking. So maybe a little early of an attack here by Donald Byrne. And Fischer plays queen to b6, which, again, not necessarily the best move. The computer likes queen to d5, but a fine move, totally fine here. And now Byrne does play the best move here, which is actually to develop the slight square bishop to c4. Again, you need to get your pieces out. You need to get castled. You need to get your king safe here. If you're wondering what happens if you capture the rook here, well, after rook takes, this is actually very bad for black because white will capture back with the bishop with an attack on the queen. After the queen moves, let's say b3, trying to trade off queens, saying, hey, I'm up material here. Let's just trade off queens. Black is just going to bring the rook into this open file. Now you've got this potential discovered attack on the queen here. The computer says the best move here is to actually just go ahead and take. And then after Black takes back, again, you still have to deal with this somehow. The knight is pinned here. It says best move, bishop to e2 to kind of, block everything. But it doesn't really work because after knight takes on c3, now you got a double attack, a fork on the rook and the bishop. Remember, the bishop is pinned. The knight kind of pinned because if you do anything here, if you move the knight, then everything's crashing down on the bishop. So you can play rook to e2, try to protect everything, but this is just crushing for Black. I mean, right? The bishop is pinned. The knight is sort of pinned. We got a knight here. We got a double attack on this. I mean, this is just crushing for Black. So Burns says, okay, enough of this. Let's just get the pieces out and get our king to safety if we can. And Fischer finds another brilliancy, another double exclamation move, knight to c3, the move we just saw anyways. He says, I'm playing it. I don't care. And now Donald Byrne actually does play the best move here, which is bishop c5. And the computer says, yeah, this is the best move. You need to ignore this knight. If you're wondering what happens if you take the knight with the queen, then again, we get something very similar to what we just saw. The rook comes in, pins here, but now you got to block with the queen. And then from here, Black will just bring the queen back. Now you have a double attack on this bishop. The queen is pinned to the king here. Can't really do anything. The computer says the best move is just to take the rook and give up the queen. But actually here, Black has this in-between move, queen to a5. And then after the king moves, now you take with the rook and we get this position here. And then Black takes the bishop back. And we get this position here where the material is technically even. But again, this knight is pinned to the rook. This rook is stuck in the corner. Very active queen here. Very active bishop. This is just crushing for Black. So after bishop to c5, as most good players do, they ignore the attack and do an attack of their own. Rook to e8, checking the king. King moves to f1. Not great, but there's not really a better square here. If you move the king out, you're just going to get checkmated eventually. And then another brilliant move, the third brilliant move, the third double exclamation move of the game. Just ignoring the attack on the queen completely and saying, hey, I want to bring this bishop in and start attacking your king and get a checkmate going. Bishop to e6, an absolute brilliant move. Donald Byrne takes the queen. I mean, it's not the best move here, but what are you really going to do? I don't think any of us are going to look at a queen just sitting there and think, okay, let me just leave the queen there. Better was to take the knight, but I mean, come on, it's a free queen. Who's not taking it? So, of course, Fischer goes ahead with his plan. Bishop to c4 with check. King now has to go to g1, and just look at this position. This rook is stuck in the corner. You're going to have to develop a pawn, push a pawn here, move the king, and then get your rook into the game. These bishops are absolute monsters. You got two rooks with open files here. Yeah, white does have the queen, but that is not enough compensation here. And now we get a great move, this check here with the knight. And I love this. This is going to open up, I think it's called a whirlwind, a whirlpool. I don't remember what it's called, but it's where you basically, it's one of my favorite things to get in chess. You don't get it very often, but basically you throw in a check. And then when you move away from the check, you open up a discover check while you take pieces, and you just keep doing this over and over. It's a lot of fun for you, not your opponent. So after this check here, Byrne has to bring the king back to f1. No other move. Now he's under the mask of the bishop, which means we have discoveries. Take the pawn, discover check. King has to go back, deliver the check. Here it is, the whirlpool, whirlwind, whatever it's called. I forget the exact name. King has to move back, another check. But of course, Bobby Fischer plays the best move after king to g1, and that is to take the bishop, taking a piece, but also opening up an attack on the queen. What an incredible move here by Bobby Fischer. Queen to b4, the best move. Attack the bishop here, and then Fischer again finds a fantastic move, and that is rook to a4, attacking the queen, defending the bishop here. Before you think, well, what about the knight here? Don't forget our good friend the bishop on the dark square here that's defending the knight. Now, the computer did say, just go ahead and check the king again, but, I mean, come on, this is a fantastic move. Imagine being white, trying to play this with white. Your queen is under attack. Everything is defended. Your king is in a terrible spot. This rook is not even in the game. Yeah, this is crushing for black here. So, okay, takes free pawn. Why not? What better? Now, finally, Bobby Fischer takes the rook. And again, it says, hey, just go ahead, throw in that check. But, I mean, okay, take the free rook. Why not? Okay, so Byrne develops the pawn on h3, trying to get the king up so this rook can get into the game. So, grab another free pawn. Get the rook into the game. Grab another free pawn. Why not? Just gobbling up material here. trading off the rooks, throws in this check, and thankfully Bobby Fischer has this resource, our good friend, the dark squared bishop again, that hopefully you saw, to block the check. So goes ahead and captures back with the knight, grabs that last pawn, and now we get a series of moves here. And thankfully for us, Donald Byrne did not resign here. I mean, he definitely could have resigned here. He probably should have resigned here, but he gives us the pleasure of a fantastic checkmate from Bobby Fischer. We just see the power of these bishops and the rook and the knight. If you look at this entire rank is gone from the king. Can't move to this diagonal, can't move to this diagonal, only has one square. So knight check, moves, knight checks again, has to move, and then the final blow, rook checkmate. Beautiful checkmate. Look at that. The bishop, the knight, and the rook all working in harmony to checkmate the white king. A fantastic game, fun game to watch, but how good was it really? What does the computer say? Well, the computer says it was very good. Of course, I'm sure you're not surprised. We know 3 brilliant moves, a great move, 18 best moves, 10 excellent moves, 2 good moves, 6 book moves, and only that one inaccuracy very early in the game, which really had no effect on the game. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say that Bobby Fischer's game of the century truly was one of the best chess games of all time. An absolute joy to watch, a joy to talk about. And if there's another game you would like to see on here to see how it holds up over the test of time against modern chess engines, drop a comment below with the game you want to see next.